I can't understand why I have the problem with the way, I don't understand laptop lineups. Primarily the Surface lineup, it's very confusing to me, and I think it's the tablet generation that's kind of screwing things up. Tablets have been around for 7 years now, and luckily, just this quarter, Apple has finally turned the sales around for them, and tablets are finally, or at least iPads, on the increase in sales. So a lot of people are replacing their laptops with their tablets. So the Surface lineup in particular thought, well, we could make the better tablet by making them half a laptop, and it's really made just an entirely confusing lineup that I don't understand. Okay, let me dive into this. So the one that's been around the longest is the Surface Pro. This is technically a tablet, right? Because when you buy it, it doesn't come with a keyboard, it's just a touchscreen and a pen, except with the latest one in which they stopped including the pen because now the stylus is better. But that's been around the longest, right? The appeal to this one is that it's a lot cheaper than the other two laptops that they provide, both the Surface Laptop and the Surface Book. This one starts at $900. However, I've never met a single human being who can use the Surface Pro without its keyboard. This is when I start doubting what is a laptop and what is a tablet. I reviewed the Surface Pro a long time ago. I remember that very clearly. It was nice that it could run desktop apps, but that was basically all it was really good at. You did not want to use the Surface Pro without a mouse and keyboard. I tried it. I tried using it in just tablet mode. That Windows 10 interface is not the best one. The Windows Store is not that diverse. It does not have that many apps on it that are useful. That's kind of what I like about MacBooks. You know, when we're talking about like what we want to edit our videos with, for instance, Apple makes Final Cut Pro, and it's a very optimized program that renders footage very quickly on very low spec MacBooks. Like if you're editing with Final Cut Pro on a 12-inch MacBook, you can edit 4K footage. The specs of that MacBook say it shouldn't happen, but it can handle it. Whereas when you're relying on the Windows Store to cater all of your desktop style apps on your tablet, Microsoft doesn't provide a parallel alternative to Final Cut. You're relying on Adobe apps, which are good, but definitely not as optimized. Now, luckily, the Surface Pro has lots of specification options. I think you can get up to half a terabyte to a terabyte. Intel i7 cores, you can get lots of RAM in them. The specs on them are really good, which helps compensate for the fact that there is not good software to complement the hardware, even though Windows is designed by Microsoft, and so is the Surface tablet. And in every single advertisement you see for the Surface Pro, it's paired to the Surface keyboard and trackpad, or of course the Surface mouse on the side. None of which are included with the package, but it's always advertised that way, so that by the time you're checking out the process and getting what you want, it's $200 to $250 more than you thought it was gonna be. Because when you first see the ad Surface Pro, it's just $900. So then what came out after the Surface Pro was the Surface Book. To me, this looked like something that was more of a dedicated laptop. It actually comes with a keyboard, a pretty heavy-built aluminum one that actually has some internal specs on the inside. It has some more battery, dedicated GPU, an actual glass trackpad, and I've used a Surface Book as well in the past. Not my favorite. It feels kind of hollow. The keyboard kind of bends a lot. It's definitely not as sturdy as my MacBook Pro feels. But again, at least it comes with these options. So the idea of using desktop style apps on the Surface Book, to me, is a bit more believable. It has a much higher starting price, but in terms of processor, storage, and RAM, it's pretty actually on par with the Surface Pro. The biggest difference, of course, with the Surface Book is that you have a dedicated GPU, and like I said, keyboard, trackpad are included. So this already was kind of weird to me. We had the Surface Pro and the Surface Book, but in terms of usability and features, like being able to write notes and being able to have good specifications with desktop style apps, of course, being supported on Windows 10, we kind of had two products that overlay each other a little bit. They're not terribly price different. Obviously, the Surface Pro is a little bit cheaper, but once you start upgrading the internal specs, you know, you get the i5 or the i7 or the higher RAM configurations, these aren't that terribly different in price. So the Surface Book really, I think, is just useful for people who need a touchscreen display, you know, something that can be detached, that is still a tablet, if you can call it that, and also have a dedicated GPU. There's kind of very narrow audience there, but I guess they're being treated. And now the weirdest thing has happened that confused me, the introduction of the Surface Laptop. I talked about it when it came out a little bit, but I ain't finished with it yet. The Surface Laptop is not a detachable tablet. It has a touchscreen, but the device doesn't even lay flat. Now, I'm not saying that I prefer laptops to have touchscreens, because I don't think that the software for this hardware is ready or optimized. I don't think Windows 10 is the good answer for laptop tablet hybrids. It's not a good operating system, because every time you get one of these Surface devices, you end up using a keyboard and mouse anyway. The touchscreen becomes an afterthought. It's used. I'm not saying you don't use the touchscreen. I'm just saying you really don't have to. That's, for me, when I draw the line between a laptop and a tablet. If I don't ever have to necessarily touch the screen, then it's not a tablet. An iPad, I think is a tablet because the only way to use it is with the touchscreen. It's a single sheet device, a single sheet of glass that you interact with. Whereas the Surface Pro, you can try to use it with just the touchscreen, but as I recall, the on-screen keyboard does not pop up fairly regularly as it does on iOS. And if you want to use actual desktop class apps, things that are even on the Windows Store but still really need a keyboard and mouse to be fully appreciated, you have to get something separate for it to actually be taken advantage of. And when you have a keyboard and mouse, there's no need for you to actually touch the screen. Of course you can, but why would you? Especially when you're using it in desktop mode, which has all the options a lot smaller. A lot of the menus and folders are not as touch friendly, so it makes sense to have a point and click mouse in this interface. But now that we have a Surface laptop, it's like we have these two devices with good specs and different price points. One comes with a keyboard, one doesn't, even though you definitely need one. And now one comes directly attached to the device. You can't even use it in tablet mode, but it still has a touch screen and it still works with the Surface Pen, but you probably shouldn't do that because it's just a hinge, so I'm confused. Plus, the biggest difference with the Surface laptop is the boost in speed because of Windows 10s. Don't even get me started on Windows 10s. The idea that instead of allowing all these .exe files that Windows has supported for years to be installed on your computer, you're only going to allow verified developers from the Windows Store, which a lot of the most popular Windows programs cannot be on the Windows Store. The one I'm thinking of, Steam. The reason they can't verify Steam on the Windows Store is because Steam itself installs other pieces of software, and it'd be too much to ask to say that every single game on Steam would have to be verified by Windows. That's not going to happen. Windows just wants to eliminate Steam and tell all of these game developers to make their apps for the Windows Store and not make them for Steam. Good luck with that, Windows. Luckily, if you buy Surface laptop, you can upgrade it to Windows 10 Pro for free until the end of this year, because the first thing I always want to do when I buy a new laptop is reinstall the operating system. That's always a fun experience. And then, of course, in 2018, you will have to pay for that privilege of downloading programs that are not from the Windows Store. See, Apple from the beginning wanted all of the apps to be verified, and they have a Mac App Store, yes, but they never said lock out everyone who's not going through the App Store to write programs on our devices. They did that with iOS, but that wasn't that big of a stretch because there was nothing like it before the iPhone came out. It had its own dedicated App Store. They could start fresh. Whereas with Macintosh, they knew that they had a history of third-party programs before the Mac App Store came out, and they still support that to this day. And the boot up times for MacBooks are still increasingly fast than Windows 10 machines because they have to update every time they shut down or restart or just boot up in general. It's just a lot slower. So Microsoft's thoughts with Windows 10s was we could make this faster if we just made every app on the device verified so that it's up to date with their NSA spyware technologies. I don't know why they need to update so often, so I'm just assuming it's spyware because I have Windows 10 on my MacBook Pro as well on boot camp, and I get those updates every time it restarts, but I don't notice any change in the operating system. What are you doing, Windows? All my friends who have Windows 10 machines, they deal with those updates all the time. I never notice a change in the OS. It always looks exactly the same. But to be fair, Apple's MacBook lineup is a little bit confusing as well. You have the 12-inch MacBook, which is real light and portable, and then you have the MacBook Air, which is cheaper and older, no Retina display, no new ports, and then the MacBook Pro, which starting price isn't that different from the 12-inch MacBook, so they kind of overlay a little bit. But at least they all come with keyboards. Apple at least has differentiated between iPads or tablets, MacBooks or laptops. That's easy to understand, it's simple, and I don't get the Surface lineup. I'm confused. Help me understand in the comments below. This is your Apple Sleepy Beer, and I will see you in the next one.